Good afternoon, US. Good evening, UK. I hope everyone's well tonight. And tonight I've got a very special guest, Karin Beasant. How are you doing?
I'm very well, and thank you, for this honor to be on here.
I can't believe it's taken me so long to speak to you
Oh,
because I've
wow.
known about you for absolutely ages. You were so well known because of a certain pub down south,
Well,
Jamaica
I
Inn.
don't know. I like to hide.
But no, it's just that pub. Like most people, like the people in the US, most people in the UK know of it. Um, Why it's such a big draw, isn't it?
It's been such an honor for 8 years next month, not only to um, be with the paranormal team,
Wow.
and to me, it's the research and the history, and every year you find out something new, and the most amazing study. That's
Yeah.
the honor, is to study the paranormal reports, the people that go there, and I'm a terrible people watcher. I love it.
Oh, I do as well. Yeah. Do you actually save up the evidence from different people as well?
Oh my God, huge data bank. I would say 80%, unfortunately, because I'm so obsessed, is in my head. But we do a thing on the public nights called a smugglers board. And
Oh,
if on the breaks, if people have any incidences or strange things, they write it down and it all goes onto a huge spreadsheet. But also interviewing staff. I interviewed a lady that was born there in 1955, a lady that worked there from 1959 to 69. And recently I had the plans. I was allowed a copy of the 1970s upgrade. So now we know exactly where the former stairs were, and where the old bathrooms used to be, and the extra bedroom that a lot of people don't know about. So yeah, it's
wow. That's
fascinating.
absolutely awesome. I just love that place. It is stunning, isn't it? It
it's
really is.
it's such an enigma, but it fascinates me as a paranormal skeptical investigator now, why there are continuing reports, and you know why is it haunted? And that's the thing. It's just a joy to be involved with.
Yeah, that's right. But you've met Richard Felix, though, haven't you?
Oh yes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
he's a
obviously,
friend.
yeah. But you've got the same tape theory as well, haven't you? You've heard the version
Well,
of that one as
like you
well.
say, the Jamaica Inn's built of granite. Granite contains silica, and we know
Yeah,
silica is
that's
used for
it.
tape. So, what I wonder is that, oh, there's not 20 ghosts, etc., but is it sort of a place where, Bob the ghost is walking past one day, and, oh, I'll come and stay here for a few days, and suddenly someone encounters this ghost and it becomes part of the inn's ghosts? Who knows?
Yeah, that's it. It's just also intriguing. So, where did this fascination come from then? What was your first like paranormal experience?
Well, like a lot of people, growing up, there were some weird things happened in my house, but we didn't tend to talk about it in the 1960s and 70s.
No, you didn't.
And when I was 30, I was lucky enough to become a tenant of a pub in the centre of Bristol that was over 300 years old. The cellar, most likely medieval, and it was haunted by a woman. And when I say haunted, it was really haunted, and it took me 6 months to venture outside my room after I used to lock up. But it was a fascinating thing to you'd turn the kitchen light off, you'd walk back upstairs, and there were very long Georgian windows. You see the light back on. It didn't like men. A regular would say, "Oh, a lady's walked into the gents with a long black dress." You go and look, no one there. Um, there used to be a taxman who was a regular that sometimes would look after my pub. If I wanted to go out, he would lock up. It would open a bar door. wide, and that was on a stiff hook. It would take the money out of the till and lay it around and things like that. So just so he would run outside and wait for his taxi outside the pub.
Love it.
One day I let the cleaner in and I had a good night the night before because it was a fantastic social life in those days. And my keys got thrown against the wall. And in typical Bristolian fashion, I just said, I ain't getting up yet. And I put the quilt over my head. But you do get used to it. You get used to your invisible flatmate.
You do. Yeah.
But I learned
Definitely.
early on that I had to keep my bedroom door open. If I didn't do that, it would kick the door.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. So when you're encountering like your first experiences, you're at school then, were you? Did you keep it to
Well,
so
I remember as a child, I read ghost stories under the
yeah.
covers with a torch. And I remember my bedroom door was always open. I can remember someone walking up the stairs, and it was a 1965 built council terrace house, my parents' house. But the footsteps never got to the top of the stairs.
Oh wow.
And I remember lying, I mean, don't say that place is haunted. It's just, it was very, very unusual things. And we had a dog when I was 14. And sometimes it would lie on the end of the bed, completely obsessed at staring at something at the ceiling. And it didn't just growl, it was the full guttural, the shackles all up from the back right up to the neck. And it didn't like something. So,
Yeah.
but again, we ushered all this under the carpet. So
Right.
when most haunted start, and you had opportunities to go on a public night, and I thought, oh my God, I didn't realize you could do this. And being very green and naive, I set up my own team. And then you get to the stage where you stay in this ignorant bliss, or you actually think, well, I'm going to try and learn if I can. And I was very lucky. So the likes of Kev Kerr and other people took me under their wing and said, that's not an orb.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, we
Yeah,
all did that.
yeah, exactly. And you still learn something new every week. I
That's
wish
right.
I had the brain of an engineer. The only thing that I seem to do well, I love my history. I always have done. And this has ignited the passion doing the paranormal.
It's fantastic. What did your parents do then? Did they just totally ignore it and did you ever speak about it?
No,
Never.
never,
No.
never said anything. I
So
remember my father, we'd gone away to Amsterdam. There was a big coach load of us. He stayed one night in my pub, heard footsteps up in the function room, and never stayed again.
wow. Never said why.
No, he just said, stuff that. Because he used to
Okay.
do the cellar for me, and you would get tripped up but couldn't see what you were tripped up by.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's so cool.
like I say, you get used to it.
Yeah, that's it. So your team then, how did you first start? What did you have kit
Oh,
wise?
it was just
Dowsing rods?
friends going out, start off with the local pub, etc. And then, again, you sort of widen your circle, and as in life, people come and go within that
Oh, they
circle.
definitely do. Yeah.
And obviously with the paranormal, sometimes you fall out with people, you fall back in, but it's a growing curve, and I think it happens to all of us. And I think now, years later, I'm just more laid back, and I just like to get on with everyone. Life's too short.
Yeah. That's the thing about paranormal. It's very up and down community, isn't it? So,
Exactly.
but it is one of them. Whether it's because like working with spirit, everything's quite intense, and you actually have to trust people really quickly.
Mm,
You are going
I
to these dark, cold places on your own, sometimes with dodgy floors, and you are trusting your life and put it in these people's hands, aren't you?
yes. And the other thing as well, being with total strangers in the dark, I'm lucky at 57, I don't even get a wolf whistle, let alone
Oh, so
anything else anymore. So I am totally safe in that environment.
yeah, so am I.
Even the ghosts don't do anything.
No, they don't with me either. That's the point. Now I know. They prefer somebody better. Yeah, yeah, that's it. I never get touched or anything. But yeah, that's not it. That's not a problem though at all. But yeah. Yeah, because
Yeah,
I go on investigations. People go, "Oh, something's touched me there. Something's touched me there." Well, very rarely, I've kind of picked
it's
things up like that.
exactly,
But yeah,
you
some
know.
people like every single time. Oh yeah, that's just done that. I'm like, yeah, okay.
I always say that if I stay in a haunted room, no matter where I go, I swear I heard screams and running footsteps when I get undressed. So I scare my husband and I scare the ghosts as well.
Yeah, but usually wrapped up well anyway. On these
Oh,
investigations, thank God. Even though they do see my legs, because I tend to wear shorts in summer.
oh, I
So,
would not inflict my legs onto the public view anymore.
oh God, I've got no problem. I have no shame. I don't care. I don't have to look at them, do I? I'm wearing them.
Oh, bless.
Oh dear, it's gone wrong already. Sound like not being touched is a bad thing. Oh dear, it's going disastrous, isn't it? Yeah, okay. So, God, so Jamaica Inn, I thought it'd be a bit messy. So, for the people out in the US who are watching this, can you tell a little bit of the history of the Jamaica Inn, please?
Yeah, I'll do a condensed one. So,
Yeah,
we now know a lot more factual historic information. So, in 1760, a man called John Broad, he may have been a sea captain, but we're not 100% sure, with a secret handshake, so no written agreement, which was very strange. He was allowed to hedge in 20 acres of land on Bodmin Moor in Cornwall. And the owner was a man called James Scarwin from Northamptonshire. So that intrigues me. What was the connection? There must have been a friendship or a business arrangement. And he was allowed to build a small dwelling house. Now, the dwelling house is the Jamaica Inn as you look face on to it, up to the chimneys. And recently, I think the museum might be an original barn that was built the same time. That's a theory. And
yeah,
I'm hoping to creep around our lovely new owners, the coaching group, to have some Dendrowood dating.
yeah.
So you never know. He also was a tenant of a dry clay works because Cornwall had this amazing clay for making porcelain. So he had money, which again, we don't know about the smuggling or anything, but we do know it's 1778 when it actually became an inn called Jamaica Inn. That the trade, both before with Bodmin Moor, there was just a Roman track that went past, and it was no hamlet. It was in the middle of nowhere, and John Broad called this Bold Venture, and it became the hamlet of Boventure, which I think is such a lovely term
Yeah.
of endearment. So when they put a toll road in, and you had to pay going up to Bodmin and back down by Palmer's Bridge, then you had coach trade and horses. So they extended the side gables to make it longer and put in a tack and stable block. But there's a beautiful white building opposite the Jamaica Inn, and that was the original forge. And
Okay.
if you go into the Jamaica Inn in the upper restaurant, you'll see one of the huge bellows. So there must have been a very good blacksmith trade there right from the beginning. So he had two sons, James and John, and they married the Granville sisters, Mary and Frances, which again, very romantic. But unfortunately, like a lot of men in the pub trade, shall we say, they didn't tend to live long. So John Broad Sr. passed away in 1801. His son James, who was running the inn at that time with his wife Mary, passed away in 1803. He was only in his early 40s. And his brother John was running a pub in nearby Altrincham. His second wife, Elizabeth, John died in 1812, and we find by 1812 that Elizabeth took over the Jamaica Inn as a single woman tenant. So you see this wonderful tenancy agreement between her. Now, there is a beautiful newspaper account of 1840 by a disgruntled guest who complains that the linen was rough. There was no decent ale because the crops had failed and the mutton was rough.
Right.
So it wasn't the best of places. But by 1828, when Elizabeth left, they'd gone from 20 acres to 1,565. Now, you don't get that just from having an inn. So is that the smuggling connection? Who knows? But the other thing people may not realise, the Jamaica Inn was a working farm for over 110 years as well.
Wow, I never knew that.
So I have beautiful accounts of auctions of livestock around about 1870, 1880. And it carried on with various owners. And you find that when a new tenant came in, they would have a tenancy of 99 years or 2.5 lifetimes. That's how it was termed.
Yeah. Oh,
so you build up this wonderful local families like the Chegwins, the Dunns, etc. And when James Dunn took over in 1834, a lovely lady called Mary Downing sued him to recognise their illegitimate child, Thomas Dunn Downing, and I have the baptism. Unfortunately, Thomas's wife, Annabella, gave birth the same year. And that may be why recently I found a year later in 1835, she had a fight with the lockkeeper of Palmer's Bridge down the bottom of the hill. So she may have been a very angry woman and she would be justified.
Gosh, yeah, definitely.
So we wonder if Mary, the crying woman in the crying baby, is based on Mary Downing and her son.
Wow.
So then we go to the 1880s and it becomes a temperance inn. The temperance movement was huge. So that meant no alcohol on the premises till 1950, when after 4 attempts they got their license back to sell spirits.
Wow. That, I know. Well, it's all this stuff you never actually realise, isn't it?
And
Totally.
again, it's things like the Daphne du Maurier. Most people think on her first visit in 1930, when her and her friend got lost on the moor, they think that was the time she had the idea to write the famous book Jamaica Inn, but it wasn't. It was the following year in 1931 in November, and the vicar of Altrincham, and I know his name now, Charles Tricklet, came and had afternoon tea in the dining room of the Jamaica Inn, which is now the main bar. And he regaled her with stories of smuggling and wreckers, inspiring her to write the book that turned into the film with Charles Norton and Maureen O'Hara and put the Jamaica Inn on the map.
Wow.
Otherwise, no one would know of this old smuggling pub.
Well, no, that's it. Because it's like, sorry about sound, everyone. There's so many pubs about, aren't there? There's so many historical pubs, but there's just something, yeah. The book as well, that That sort of set it
Exactly.
on the map, doesn't it?
But it's all those little gems of information you find in old newspaper cuttings. So when you go upstairs in the old part of the inn and you turn left, directly to your right is a square window. And we were always told that during the smuggling times, a candle would be lit to let you know if the custom men were about. But
Like
just
it.
recently, I found out another story why a candle would go in. One of the landladies was having an affair with the farmer, so she would put a lit candle in the window if the landlord was away.
That's
What a
brilliant.
great idea.
It's interesting, isn't it? Um, but how many were some of these facts actually found out through investigations, and then you checked upon
Um,
it afterwards, or did you
no,
get the facts first?
so we get lots of information, but until I have historical proof, then even, as we say, what haunts the inn, we cannot prove 100%, like Jack, the man that was lured onto the moor, that in the 1980 was the sailor and then gradually became a smuggler. So as the stories change, a
Yeah,
sailor would make sense because a sailor would come ashore, he would have a bag of coin, and that's the best way to rob someone to take their money.
yeah.
But
It's
who
just
he is, if his name's right, we don't know. What we do know, this entity or poltergeist or whatever is very naughty, very mischievous, and I want to be him when I die. Because when
awesome.
he grabs someone's right buttock on command, and he's done it 3 times last year when they were at another part of the inn and they couldn't hear what we were saying.
Yeah,
I
evidence like
cannot.
that. Yeah, I've seen that happen once. It was a newbie who was a complete skeptic, and it was at Draco. So we were like right at some crossroads basically,
Mm.
and they got like people to stand at the four down the 4 bits of tunnel, and this guy was a skeptic. So his friend said, "Go on, give him a punch." And yeah, he'd gone all the way back down, and he couldn't hear, and yeah, he got came running back. Something had like hit him. So yeah, and I just love it when things like that happen.
But it is, and it makes you question your skepticism with
Yeah.
it. And just a few weeks ago, Nick, we have a night porter now, so he has to be around the main bar and reception all night. So about 1 in the morning, he said it was really weird. He said he walks around with just a few lights on, not a problem. But by 1 o'clock, he said this feeling of uncomfortableness came over him. And he was in the upper restaurant and he heard glasses clinking together. So he went up to the bar and there's a rack of about 7 or 8 pint glasses, just those only. And they were just going back and forth, hitting each other. The others were perfectly still. And I said, "What did you do?" He said, "Well, I just walked away and decided to clean elsewhere."
Yeah. So was he a complete skeptic then when he went into this job? Just doing
he
another job, isn't he?
just
Really?
he just sort of keeps away from everything, and a lot of the staff, because years ago there used to be a lovely lady, she was in charge of housekeeping, so when we had a public night and we'd see her in the morning, she would get quite cross. She said, "Oh, they're going to start again now," because apparently in room 3 they would clean the room, clean the mirrors, but she always had to go back because tiny handprints would be all over the mirror just to annoy her, she said.
That's awesome. Well, it's not for her, but yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I just love things like that. But did she talk to them as well? I wonder if
um
she went in and actually spoke, going, "Oh, you've done it again."
Well, I think, like you say, when I lived with the one, you do. I remember when my coaster went missing, I picked my tea up and went to put it back down on the coaster. It'd gone, searched high and low, never saw it again. So I gave a few choice words to my invisible flatmate not to do such things. I don't know whether it had effect or not because I don't see them, unfortunately.
Yeah, but not many people do see them, do they? You know, like I see them in my mind's eye. But yeah, to actually see them, that's the holy grail, isn't it?
But my first ever apparition was the Jamaica Inn years before that.
Awesome.
So in the museum, and it was just like little shreds of image, was a girl in a dark dress with a white oversmock, so Victorian, about 7 or 8 years old, and beautiful long blonde curly hair. What I didn't know, that description has been seen for over 30 years there, and
Wow.
it's seen regularly. So, and the most common name that comes up is Elizabeth. Whether that is her name, I can't say hand on heart, but it seems to answer to that name.
Yeah,
But you
that's
also
it.
get the folklore. Hannah in room 5 didn't exist 14 years ago. Someone decided that was her name, and she's become an entity of her own.
Yeah. So whether she's actually with the property or arrived at the property later? Question mark.
I I think it's a name that was given, and it's not the
They
name.
just
There
presumed.
is a girl and a boy that's seen. I've seen the little boy in a short shadow form. Um, but it's what fascinates me by collecting the data, and I think as whether as a team or whoever you are, if you are lucky enough to look after a venue, I think you have a moral responsibility to collect, interview, to try and find out as much information as you can.
Definitely.
My education growing up was terrible, but sometimes you are lucky, and the wonderful Helen Bennett, who's a researcher, started me off with the Jamaica Inn with names of landlords and tips how to research. But without her, we wouldn't know so much that we do now.
Did you like history at school?
As my best subject. How sad is that?
No, that's good. Because
But
at least you're doing it
it's
now in the
fascinating, and I'm
future.
trying to learn Cornish because when you speak Cornish at the Jamaica Inn, that has effect. So my fascination now is going into different languages. I was at the Warmley Clock Tower Saturday, and a work colleague was there, and she's from one of the Russian states, so she spoke Russian and Kurdish. Bang, things happened.
Yeah.
So, is language a key of some sort? Also, language going back down the centuries. Um, so, if you're trying to greet someone from the 1700s, what you would say now is totally different to then.
Yeah, that's it.
But I just love reading and finding out that sort of information.
Yeah. It
It's
is
never
good.
boring.
No, that's it. How many people do you get taking boards there? And obviously, there's going to be the language issue, isn't there?
But exactly. We had two Australian ladies about 3 years ago, and I still keep in touch with one of them.
Oh,
And
wow.
we were in the main bar, and they were talking about transportation, and um, they seemed to connect with someone who claimed he was transported but came back after 15 years. So the one lady knew her history really well, and she knew the ports where the English transportation ships came in, and she did some trick questions, and we found out the name of one of the bays, but we don't know exactly who this person was, so we can't check the transportation list to see if it's
Okay.
true. But again, her Australian accent was awesome. Same as when you get American accents, because people don't realize during the Second World War, just before D-Day, there were 8,000 US troops around Bodmin and Bodmin Moor. There were
Wow.
4 million in England alone. You couldn't move for a US soldier. And supposedly, I believe it, but I would say it's 80% true, that General Patton stayed at the Jamaica Inn for 3 nights on the 22nd of June 1944, because Claude Finnimore, the landlord, claims he served him 12 eggs.
Wow. Okay.
And
So
another historian from Launceston claims that our own General Montgomery went up to see him and they hated each other in real life. And why do we have a US airman the last 5-6 years suddenly haunting the Jamaica Inn? I've had some amazing reports.
interesting.
Do ghosts come and go? And we also have a modern one, a skinhead in orange jumper and blue jeans. I've got 3 reports, one from 1980 and 2 in just 2022.
Interesting. Any ideas?
No idea yet.
Yeah, because people
Needs
will
some
go
more
missing on the moors,
investigation.
won't they?
So if ghosts in life we can travel where we want, so does that mean the dead can travel where they want? So I
Possibly.
have a friend who's a medium who claims that Jack came on an investigation at another venue we were investigating.
I believe that.
He said he came up to say hello. I said, well, he didn't say hello when I was down the inn the other week. So I don't
Yeah,
know. It would be fascinating, if you could prove it.
I love it. I went to a local place called Gresley Hall, so it's got a lot of history to it. And right near the woods are quite spooky. So I got there early,
Mm.
went round these woods, and managed to take something from the woods up to Gresley. It's a Rastafarian, okay.
Oh,
So he
wow.
ends up in Gresley Hall, and he overshadows a bloke, one of the guests, so much. The guest had to leave just because he's speaking in a Jamaican accent and everything. And like
That's
he was actually
brilliant.
like looking at, like the spirits of Gresley Hall were like, what? And I think they could actually, it blows your head away, doesn't it?
But that's it. I mean, the paranormal is just not sitting there and saying tap once for yes, tap, tap twice for
Oh,
no.
God, no.
There's so much more to it. And,
And
there's a big group of us investigators that taking turns, I do lots of private, we did
yeah,
Chillingham last year. There were 20 of us, 3 days and 3 nights. And to me, it's not about the belief, it's talking to each other, debating, thinking of experiments with our different beliefs put together. And
yeah.
that's what makes it so interesting as an investigator.
Yeah, you just do try and come out with theories all the time, don't you? And they're just mad. And like when I talk to people who aren't into the paranormal, it's like, you just have to go with this story. This is what happened. But if you talk to an investigator, you just say, "Oh, this happened." They go, "Yeah, okay, that's cool." But you talk to somebody who hasn't been on an event and go, "Oh yeah, we took a raster to," and they're like, huh? What? There's a ghost there, and there's a ghost there, or whatever you call them as well. That's, what do you call them?
Yeah.
Ghosts, spirits, whatever. I don't know. People.
And I mean, I expect a lot of investigators can relate to this. We've all been somewhere, we had the classic in the ear. Well, if they can do that, why can't they say, hi, John, dead 200 years, nice to meet you? I
Yeah.
even had in Techno Towers a few years ago, walking out on my own, I had a male voice in my ear. It's not what he said, it was a very rude word beginning with W. It was the way he said it with such fun. And I thought it was hilarious.
Oh
So
wow.
if he can do that, why can't they do more things on command, so to speak? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, because so many times, like you go on an investigation, it's like, will you do this? Will you do that? And like, I used an app, and I don't know what I think about apps, but I try and do like probability. You know, some are like, we've got so many words in them that come out, but some of the words that kept coming out, like idiot and stupid and things like that. And it's like, oh, okay. Did they have an issue with the questions coming out? And then
Mm,
somebody says, oh, can you go up to the bear? And then on the app it says bear. Well,
mm.
how? What's the probability of that word coming out of all those? I don't particularly know how that app works out. It's not one I usually use. I was just doing avoidance because I don't always take part in table tipping or stuff with people I don't
Yeah.
know. Or I'll just sit at the back and just try and zone out. I think and just see what
Oh,
see what I can pick up basically. But yeah, and it's just weird, isn't it? What you can get, and oh, it's brilliant.
I
Eric here
mhm.
mentions table tipping. Now, I was actually chatting on a US radio show, straight podcast, and the guy was like just amazed at this table tipping which we do. But yeah,
Oh, bless him.
but it is interesting because obviously you've got to trust the people who are doing it. But it is a thing they do a lot at public events because it gives people who have never experienced anything the chance to maybe take part in something when they sort of
Mm.
can't do, but yeah, I've had it where the table it's like been like a Zimmer frame at one moment, then all of a sudden it's been shoved around like crazy. And you could
Oh,
actually feel like
wow.
different energy had gone on it. Whereas like if it had been, I always question like who's pushing it, who's the I've been there when people have pushed it, that's generally why I just keep away. But
Yeah.
there you go. But you're not going to waste
It's
your
like
time,
with
are you?
investigators, trust is the biggest thing.
It's massive, isn't
I
it?
don't understand why someone would want to fake. I don't understand, because you're deluding yourself as well as others.
Yeah, there's just no
Um,
point to it. You're going out for a reason. Well, you think you're going out, but some are going out for different reasons, aren't they?
it's like the Jamaica Inn, I'm a great people watcher, and on the public nights,
Oh no.
you know, I always say to them that it doesn't matter on your belief, it's the effort you put in. I said, I'm very, very skeptical. I said, but if I would stand there naked on one leg to see a ghost, I would do it. The ghost would need therapy, but I would do it anyway.
Yeah.
And the type of people that will get nothing because they give out that sort of, well, come on
And
then.
they've got their arms crossed already, haven't they?
Yeah, and they expect things to happen. As we say, some nights you'll get nothing, and I mean nothing. The first night we came back after COVID, we thought, oh my God, it's going to be amazing. It was flat. And myself and Lisa were in one of the haunted rooms, room 3. We just got into bed, footsteps down the corridor without the motion activated light on, tapping in the room. And Lisa said, you can stop that, blink, blink, because you've had all night and we're going to bed.
Lovely.
And it just shows the fun. They're not there to entertain. If they want to interact, the choice is theirs. I was speaking
Precisely.
to the manager today. There are paranormal residents. It's up to them. You know,
Definitely. Yeah.
sometimes they might not like anyone or like people. It's their choice.
Yeah. I'm sure they stand back. You got a group of people in a place, and that you just know that they stand back thinking, "Oh, what we got tonight then?" I'm sure they have
Perfect
a discussion.
example. 2018, Rachel Haywood from the team wrote where there was a private paranormal hire. She was in the bar. I was sat next to her, looking the wrong way, of course. And there's a big table next to the main fire, and we always call it Jack's Corner. And she happened to look up to her right, and it totally blew her away. There was a man sat in one of our chairs. So how would a ghost know and see a chair in real time, which confuses me? He was dressed in breeches, boots, white frilly shirt, black beard, black curly hair, no hat. He had his elbow on the table and his hand up like that. But she said it was the expression between amusement and, oh God, here we
There we
go.
go. Yeah.
But that image, I had a lady tap me on the shoulder in 2018, earlier that year. She was walking up the stairs 2016, looked to her right outside room 5. She described exactly the same image. And then the lovely medium from Haunted Britain Investigates, they allowed me to go round. He described the same person stood outside room 5. So that's 3 separate verifications of this man, sometimes with a hat, sometimes without. Is it Jack? Is it James Broad? We cannot say.
Yeah.
But whoever it is, he has a sense of humour.
It's lovely though, isn't it? mediums, and different mediums get the same information. It's great. Like the other day, I came out with a first name and a surname, and I was like, oh, God knows, and like people are doubting rods and they're getting confirmation. But then in the conversation, I threw something wrong in.
Yeah.
So I was testing those, like I was getting this information, but then I said something which I knew was wrong. And the doubting rods went no. And it's like, my God, So I was really cleared up that night. It was just coming through, and yeah.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I was quite astonished myself, to be fair. But yeah, so I'm like buzzing about that still. But yeah, mediums do come out with some great information, and I think I've got more. It's okay, like having things and getting a yes/no answer.
Mm.
Gosh, I want more. Everyone wants more, don't they? But it's being fed the questions to ask to get the yes as well.
Mm. The other thing that I found ever since we dressed up at the Jamaica Inn, so Lisa, our team member, who's on a sabbatical, bless her, because she's got breast cancer. She's going to be fine, but she's out for a year. She is an amazing person, very talented. So she hand sewed a Georgian and Victorian dress from original patterns. And since those dresses, I wore the Victorian one, she had the Georgian, it seems to have ramped up things. So last May, a friend of mine, Russet, who owns Bath Theatrical Costume Hire, she came to Woodchester and we did a giant Singapore experiment. So everyone, Chris Howley, was dressed up in different period costumes from the Spring Park era right through to the Second World War. So Kev Kerr had on a real army uniform from the Second World War time. Wow. Alan had a Royal Navy uniform, and it was an amazing experiment, and we all really enjoyed it. Had some weird things happen, but to me, that is something that I want to do more. But to have the guests, or we did it recently at a private investigation. Again, it had a fantastic result. So perhaps we need to do more that sort of thing as investigators. Language, clothing, historical knowledge. And it's not about being clever. It's just doing a tiny bit of research. That's it.
That's brilliant. So what's your scariest encounter at Jamaica Inn then?
So one of the first times I stayed overnight before I was associated with the paranormal there, I was in room 5 and I was with my friend Tracy, and the bathroom door used to have a sort of like a little catch. And I know Richard Felix, when he stayed there in 2004, had the same thing. Something was pressing the catch, even though the windows were shut, so it's not a breeze. We just got into bed, we had that, and then there were clear footsteps going from my side of the bed, walking round to Tracy's, but not on carpet, on floorboards. It wasn't man, it was more feminine. It was lighter footsteps. So I was really tired. I remember Tracy kept poking me. She said, "Don't you go to sleep. It's just walk round to my side." And I remember saying, "Oh, I'll talk to it in the morning." But I was in the manager's flat a few years after. We'd just done an event and heard footsteps come up the stairs. Again, not on thick carpet, on the actual floorboards. And the manager's flat door didn't lock. So I'm led in bed and I'm thinking, what's a guest doing out at 3:30 in the morning? It came up and it was pacing outside the door. And I thought, I don't know who's going to be more shocked, me or a guest seeing me in my pajamas. So I thought, I'll keep an eye out. And then suddenly the footsteps were walking around my bed as loud as anything. So as any very serious paranormal investigator, I put the quilt over my head because that stops anything happening to you, and went to sleep.
I've done that, yeah. I've got an EDI, and I'd got an issue with something. Something had followed me home, and it'd been giving me a bit of grief. And I went upstairs and put my EDI on the bed, and something tapped. It's like, oh shit! So that was it. Yeah, we go to bed.
But it's weird, now I love it if those sort of things happen. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I don't generally get an issue, but yeah, that was a bit too close. Yeah, but oh, it's awesome. So what other places have you been to? You've been to Woodchester then, and
Oh,
you've been to some
crikey.
amazing places.
I love doing the private hire.
Oh yeah,
The German in me, I like to organise. So we do a lot of places down in Cornwall, Pengenna, St Bennet's Abbey. We did Chinningham. That was a challenge because organising that for 3 days and 3 nights. We recently went to North Wales. And stayed at a lodge owned by one of the guitarists from Thin Lizzy. Ever such a nice chap, Dave. And we investigated nearby there. So Warmly Clock Tower, I advise that. I love that. It's close to me. It's 1746. And it's an interesting place. When I first started doing it for 3 years secretly, hardly anything happened. Whether we encourage it or whether you bring them alive, I don't know. But it's a beautiful little charity place, and it's cheap to hire.
that's good.
And
Yeah,
all the proceeds keep the doors open for community use. And I love when the paranormal can do good like that.
yeah,
I'm also a consultant for Visit Somerset, so I advise on haunted locations. And I like, if a venue wants to come out into our paranormal world, that they go into it with their eyes open, warts and all.
yeah,
So as an
definitely.
investigator, I know what we want from a venue, but also to make the venue understand the goods and the bad about the paranormal, how it can affect the business, protect your heritage, your history. Um, and I'm also one of the founder members of the UK Paranormal Society. So that was 3 years before it went live last year. So it's a new charity, and obviously my interest is the heritage. But again, I just love this, and there's a new place in Somerset in a little village that's going to come out, and I just love to advise, bring it out to the paranormal, and then off they go.
That's great because so many decent, excuse the feedback. There's been so many decent locations what we've lost, within the last couple of years, haven't there? So it's great if others
Exactly,
are coming through.
Drakelow, Sid's
Draco.
still a close friend, but it's like as well the Jamaica Inn. I think everyone should
That
be
was
able to
so,
investigate it.
yeah,
So that's why we do private team hire. So you have two choices. You can, because it's a 36-bed hotel, people don't realise it's very busy.
of course it
We
is.
avoid the busy peak times because it's too noisy. But the only way as an investigator to do it is to take out the old block of bedrooms, do an overnight stay for 19 investigators. If you can't do that, then we organise one. So might have 3 members of one team, 5 of another, but then they get to enjoy the whole inn.
That's it.
And
That's a big one.
that's what you want. I
Yeah,
don't understand just staying in a hotel room, just doing that when you can do the whole place.
yeah,
Especially if you're traveling, because I'm used to traveling up and down to Cornwall, but how often 2 hours to us is nothing.
yeah. That's right. Like when I want to, I'm determined to go to Jamaica Inn, but if I do that, I want to do Bodmin Gel as well. Because
Friday
it is
night,
about
Saturday night, perfect.
3-4 hours drive. Well, 4 plus, and yeah, traffic. So yeah, you just want to do everything you can, and yeah, I'd be up for that. But
It is, and there's more and more heritage locations coming onto the paranormal market, which is fantastic, because then if you can give something back, because as investigators we are so lucky. There's going to be some news about Wookey Hall soon. I've been helping Chris, the manager, for investigators. So I'm so excited about that.
Cool.
But again, to have venues, I think venues should have their own history packs to protect their history. So I advise that. And also for them to collect paranormal reports themselves. So when a team or an event company hire it, what's been experienced, it's truthful. And then they can add to it as well, what their experience is. David Golden, who looks after Dorchester Shire Hall and No Fault and now East Dorset Museum, he's a shining example of how to protect the history with the terms and conditions, but also to be friendly and go above and beyond.
Yeah.
And if we all come together and do this, regardless of what we believe, we make our paranormal so much nicer. Back at me, I'm on one today. I don't mean it.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, it is great when people can work together. Like my friend is co-founder of a local group, and their thing is heritage, so they go into a lot of the heritage sites. That, they've worked at it.
Yeah.
She actually worked for one of the heritage places, and and you get in these great locations, and I just feel so honoured being in them.
Linda Brooks, I've only spoken to her a couple of times. An amazing lady. Absolutely amazing. And you from afar, you see the work that some of these teams are doing, and it's absolutely lovely. And also some of the event companies, they do sterling work.
Yeah, that's right.
So you can't judge someone just from, you have to get to know them.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
again, it's exactly, and kindness doesn't hurt. Be kind.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm like a paranormal database sometimes. Carol, do you know this? Do you know that? Hang on. And I'm rushed off my feet. But again, it's so nice that you can do these things.
Yeah, that's it. It is great. It really is. And yeah, the people that you meet, like
Oh,
I've been hiring locations and been inviting people from all around the country, and they've come, and sort of from Ellesmere Port, from Ely, and to come to sort of Nottingham way. It's just brilliant. And just to meet these people you've met on Facebook, to actually meet
yeah.
them in real life and investigate them, it's great, isn't it?
And you find that in our paranormal community, you're friends with people you would never be friends with outside of it,
Definitely. Yeah,
because you
that's
have
right.
that common connection, and we are all weird because we love what we do.
Yeah.
Um, but again, and I have to thank the Jamaica Inn because, myself, Lisa, Gemma, and Rachel, the team there, without the Jamaica Inn, it wouldn't have opened up some amazing doors that have been opened to me. And there's a new one, and I'm so lucky. There's a place in Bristol where next month we're starting a 2-year private study. So we're going to go about every 2 or 3 months to study, to document. We can't make it public, but
No.
for me, it's a chance of a lifetime with Kev Kerr. So getting some clever people in to study, what is a ghost? Why are there hauntings? And it's the layers that is going underneath. It's not the above, it's the below. So it is, to me, an honor to do that. And I've got another one that I've been trying to organize for 2 years. I just haven't had the time.
Bless you.
But it's how lucky are we to have the trust that these locations give us. I was at the old vicarage because I look after the old vicarage in Bridgewater, and in between Christmas and New Year, the owner gave me her keys. 6 of us had the whole hotel to ourselves. It was fabulous because
Yeah, you can,
normally there's
get
people.
that trust, can't you, from places, and it's just brilliant. Yeah.
And again, there was a medium. There's me, Skeptic Meg. There's some lovely investigators from Wales, new people. Brilliant, Michelle and Steve. Fabulous. And again, because someone's been doing it, say 10, 15 years, someone's been doing it 2 years. We're all on equal footing
That's right.
because we learn from each other.
Yeah, because somebody coming into it for 2 years, they've got a different perspective. Like you kind of get set in your ways of like
Yeah.
you're coming with all the ideas and things, and then I don't know, you kind of you develop
And
as you go along.
also,
But
you
fresh
might not
eyes,
agree with something, but I love a good debate. And we
I
had a
do.
fantastic good night actually debating and talking about our differences with no ill feeling whatsoever. And to me,
Yeah,
that's the best joy.
yeah. I do like sort of discussing theories. It's just brilliant, isn't it? And we don't know. We
Oh,
don't know the answer, so we just go for it. And you've got your own ideas, and
and
yeah.
I like a clever person that can explain things to me in what I call council estate layman's terms.
Oh yeah, I don't do technical. I can't be bothered. Yeah, I'm rubbish at that. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, just say it as it is, and there you go. Don't beat about the bush, so to speak. But I yeah, I do like things like straight, and that's it. But yeah, it's just a wonderful thing to do, isn't it?
You know,
So
and so just like with the Jamaica Inn in Launceston, there's the Causley Trust. And recently, last October, I wrote and I've never done it before. I would never have attempted this 2 years ago. I wrote a ghost walk with the history, because Launceston has fabulous history. And there's hang drawn in quartering in the town square, and one of the Ching family was ate by cannibals. So
gosh,
you find these fabulous stories, but there's one thing that I've got to tell you. This, I love this. So James Broad, the son of the first owner, when people were selling things, they would sign an affidavit and it would go in the newspaper. And I think England's the only place that has this totally weird class system of ours. We like to give ourselves titles. Oh no, I'm not working class, I'm middle class.
yeah,
And in 1798, James Broad, yeoman of the Jamaica Inn, witnessed by three dignitaries of the town of Launceston, said that he suffered greatly with pains in his bowels and stomach. And Mr. Ching, chemist of Launceston, who devised worm lozenges, he partaked of one worm lozenge, and the following day he excised worms of various lengths from a few inches to 7 feet. And he's felt so much better since.
nice, lovely.
But I chatted to my mum. She's 95 next month. She was brought up on a farm in the Sudetenland. She said we all had worms.
Ugh,
In the
nice.
1920s and 1930s, yeah.
Mm. I never knew that. I really didn't.
There you go.
Oh gosh, you learn new things then. Yeah, nice. So I didn't know if it happened in the US, but it happened in the UK apparently. God, no.
We all did.
Oh,
So
no.
someone invented a lozenge. Mr. Ching was very famous as a chemist, and I have a token that was minted by him with his image on the token.
Wow.
How sad am I?
That's incredible though. It's brilliant. It really is. Yeah, the history is so fascinating.
It,
It is.
but it grows, it evolves, and then you find other places. It's like um, our hooded figure, not a monk, most likely a pilgrim.
They
So
always
people,
assume it's a monk, don't they?
exactly.
A
So
lot of time.
we sit on some reports because we don't want to influence
Mm.
people to say things that are mistaken identity. So in room 4 in the alcove, we had 2 reports from mediums over a case of 2 years of a hooded figure just standing there. And describing it was just hood over. They couldn't see the face, but it wasn't monk garments. That was made very clear. Then a year or so later, the night manager at the time was in the cellar, which is behind the bar, and he was knelt on the floor, stacking bottles. One came out from a shelf landed perfectly in front of him. He looked to itself and he said, the only way I can describe it was Gandalf stood there with a white beard.
Wow.
So we joked and made fun of him. Then, a year ago, one of the young servers in the lower restaurant saw the same figure stood by the fireplace. And then a few weeks ago, a woman in room 34, which is a modern extension, only 4 or 5 years old, woke up to see a man with she had a grey sort of hood and a long white beard leaning over the bed looking intently at her husband.
Mad.
But Cornwall is famous for the pilgrim trail that it has, and about 5 miles down from Jamaica Inn is a village called Temple, and it was founded by the Knights Templar. So
Yeah.
is this a pilgrim? Is this someone else? I don't know.
The Knights Templar thing itself is amazing. There's so many places where people think have links to that as well. It's
St Benet's outside Bodmin. It was founded by the Order of St John, and there's a ghostly nun in room 5 and 6.
wow, brilliant. I just love it. It's just fascinating. But you know, how you remember the history as well.
Oh, I told you I'm weird.
No, but it's brilliant. It's like Richard Felix, he'll come out with this, that, and like
Oh,
and like I couldn't do that.
I could
I
listen
can't
to him
remember
for
that. Oh,
hours,
yeah,
absolute hours.
yeah,
And the most
yeah,
exciting thing, I've got a friend that owns a studio in Bristol, and the Stable Block has had the same public videos, about 7 minutes long, for over 20 something years. And the CEO of the coaching has commissioned the Q Studios to do a new one. And we're doing a documentary, we're doing a paranormal themed, we're going to do some media filming. So it gets the correct history out there.
yeah.
And it's such an honor to be put in this position with all this research. So watch this space for the next few months. I'm trying to hide behind the camera, but they're
Oh,
saying I have to be on the video, so I'll sound like Farmer George, which is good because it sounds Cornish anyway. But Cornish is a lot slower. I reckon it's Bristolian.
oh, bless you. Eric, asking, how long during the off season can some stay at the Jamaica Inn?
As long as you want.
There you go.
There are people that come down and stay for a couple of weeks. Um,
Yeah,
they're like I say, it's a holiday tourist destination. So from April to the end of September, it gets really busy. So
yeah,
that's why we try to keep the paranormal, especially the private hire, in the quieter months, January, February, especially.
yeah. It's just the roads are heaving as well, aren't they? And that's what puts me
Oh,
off. And with COVID, like with people staying in the UK, a lot more going camping as well.
yes.
I think that's why I've avoided Cornwall more recently. I've gone
But
up to Scotland.
it's such I mean, I fall in love with the county. You know,
Oh,
Bodmin
it's
Moor. When you
beautiful.
think you come down on this A30 by Brown Willie and you see Jamaica Inn in the distance. Now that's 915 feet above sea level. But
Oh,
at 6:30 in the morning, you'll get the mist around. It looks like an island floating in a white sea.
oh, so
It is
nice.
spectacular. You imagine, you know, going back to the late 1700s, and you get this mist a lot.
Yeah,
How
I've been to
eerie that
Bodmin.
would have been.
Yeah, when I
Oh,
went over Bodmin, it was all misty and creepy. Yeah, and you
and you
see
had
the
the
old.
bogs.
You've got the old works as well, the old mine shafts, and
Yeah.
just them
You've got
looming and
about 7 miles as the crow flies. You've got Davistow Airport. So, Second World War, you had the big flying fortresses flying out of there. You had a
wow,
German bomber hit the side of Brown Willie Hill by the Jamaica Inn. So there are quite a few plane crashes and a helicopter crash.
yeah, you've all
So
got
yeah,
that.
makes
But
you wonder.
a lot of the investigators, they always go in like trying to go for a specific area because I've been to Derby Jail, I go there, um, and everyone's trying to get what happened at the jail. Well, I picked up on somebody who was at the nightclub because the buildings have had a lot of different uses. But a lot
Exactly.
of people just focus on the same things time and time again.
I
That
I
looking at the
spent
bigger picture.
I spent 3 hours a couple of years ago going through all the newspaper reports and sending them to Richard.
Wow.
And I found a story above a story of Derby Jail, because obviously the other prisons that were there. And it was of a dragoon who just married his wife. And the following morning, they're on a path, on horse, coming towards Derby. He got out his knife, not his sword, his knife, slit his throat, and committed suicide in front of her. 24 hours married.
Jesus.
And the
She had
newspapers
an
were
effect on her.
Yeah, but the newspapers were quite graphic. And what I didn't know from Derby Girl, they had chain gangs. They took the prisoners out, shackled them behind a coach, especially during the Napoleonic Wars. And there's
Wow.
one where they got out of their shackles behind the coach. They robbed one of the chaps looking after him, and they found the prisoners in a nearby inn getting drunk.
Gosh.
Those are the stories I like, not the main things, the
Yeah, the
stories that are
quirky. Yeah. Yeah, I think I was at jail one night and I picked up a like white cut horse-drawn carriage, and it was kind of white. And yeah, but whether that was modern or you don't know what era you're picking up on sometimes, do
but
you?
you've got a friary just around the corner from it as
Yeah,
well.
that's right. Yeah, it's
So,
well, you've got the other prison as well, so yeah, you've
yeah,
got so much going on. And
it's
well,
it's it's, it's
Derby's supposed to be mega
fascinating.
haunted as well. You've just got so much happening, so many interesting buildings, haven't you?
We do you remember when we had that break between COVID, where you had, I think it was about 4 or 5 weeks,
Freedom. Yeah.
where we were allowed to go out, and myself and Sarah stayed at Derby Jail a Sunday
Wow.
night. So we made the mistake of not bringing a sleeping bag or anything. So I just put a blanket down and I fell asleep next to the skeleton.
Oh yeah.
But it was lovely, just the two of us investigating that awesome jail.
That's right. To get it, the silence and everything, and
Oh,
the bed's not very comfy, is it?
no. Well, I didn't even attempt because I probably would have broken it with my weight. So, yeah, I
I
slept on the
sit on
stone
it.
floor.
Yeah, I
But
wouldn't.
we did hear a woman's voice very softly
Oh,
twice during there. Yeah.
oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, it's just lovely what you can pick up at different places, and when you do get the stories, and sometimes you get the real life, you get the sorrow, you get happiness, and it is special, isn't it? What you do get through, it really
I
is.
think in this country we have a wealth of such fascinating buildings,
Oh, we
and
do.
as more open the doors, it's to me, when I stayed at Chillingham, I didn't really get anything paranormal, but I didn't care
Yeah,
because it was such an honour to be in that castle, to live and breathe the history.
yeah,
And
that's right.
I always look at it, if something paranormal happens, it's a bonus. But to me, it's better than lying on a beach. Not that I would
Yeah,
expose my body on a beach now, but
it's so long since I've been to a beach. Well, to lie on, yeah, yeah, certainly not in
no, I
the
might
UK
get
though.
harpooned, so I stay away.
Oh yeah, I can float well as well. I naturally like floating. Yeah, got buoyancy aids. There you go. Yeah,
I
yeah,
know.
but there you go. Uh, we're not only human spirits, but animals too, like horses and all other kinds. And yeah, you do get reports of all sorts of animals, don't you?
We've got a dog at the Jamaica Inn. It's like an Irish wolfhound, but smaller. But round about 1870 to 1890, a lot of men came to the inn and would hire hunting dogs because shooting was very popular.
Yeah, of course it was. And you got
So
the
I've
laws.
seen an advert in the Victorian newspaper for that. But recently, a chap came out of room 4 on a public night and he saw a cat. Now, there is a black cat that wanders from across the road, but he never comes inside the inn.
Interesting.
So perhaps we have a cat. We'll have to see if we get more reports.
Yeah. Rachel Hayward, excellent to see you promoting the positives of paranormal. The lippy looks good. There you go.
Well, it's not often she sees me with makeup on. I made an effort, so.
Oh, bless you. I have as well, but mine looks really pasty. But yeah, hide
Oh, the
behind my
things we
glasses.
have
It's
to
good.
do.
Yeah, I know. On a Monday, I don't go out anywhere, but yeah, I try and put a bit on. Yeah, so I don't look as rough as Yeah, there you go. But yeah, it's just it's really fascinating. It's fascinating location that you're at, and you've got some events lined up as well, haven't you? There.
Yeah,
Have you sold out of them
we
yet? Because there's Richard, isn't there? Richard
we've got Richard
Esther.
Estep on the
Yeah.
11th of February. Um, there's
Any
still
tickets left?
spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's still
Okay.
spaces. So excited because he's still in the middle of, obviously with COVID, he hasn't been back, but he said, I still got to finish the Jamaica Inn book. But every time he thinks, right, I'll get on with it, he said, you come up with new things.
Bless
So,
him. Yeah.
so he keeps holding on because the history keeps changing.
Yeah.
But his wife Laura, they just love the place, and they of course as well they love Bob and Gel.
Yeah.
But they're over. We have a psychic night that is the paranormal side sold out. I think there's only a few tickets left for the psychic show, and that's with Sean Friend and Bill Nickerson.
Okay.
That will be fun. And I am hoping to get the lovely Dr. Kate Sherrill, but we do have her in Bristol. Now, there is a church in Bristol called the Mount Without. My friend Norman owns it. And it was a beautiful church. It goes back to medieval times. It's on a historical part of Bristol. So the history is surreal. Now, when he took it on, there was no roof. There was a fire in 2011. It had a direct hit during the Second World War. There were 300 people in the crypt sheltering. They all survived. They rebuilt the roofs. Amazing. They built things to last in those days.
Oh, it's different.
Now,
Yeah.
the nave was replaced, like a lot of churches, around about the late 1700s, but he had to lower the crypt. And myself and Sarah were so lucky to join the archaeologist for 2 days as the crypts were opened and we had to excavate some of the bodies. And what
Okay.
fascinated me is if a coffin was completely dry, it was really well preserved. And these coffins were beautiful, lovely wooden coffins with beautiful studs. You have perfume bottles inside.
My
And then
God.
if you got a crypt where it was really damp, you find that the coffin came away in your hands and the bones went to like powder. So that was a great learning curve, but also, you had to be respectful. And some we were lucky enough to stay in situ, others had to be moved. But there's a tombstone in the crypt, and the name is Horatio Nelson. Obviously, not the real one. So on Thursday, the 9th of February, Dr. Kate Sherrill, our lovely Kate, is doing a talk 7:30 to 8:30 on Victoria seance and funeral practices. Then at 9:30 to 1:30 for just £25, we are doing a Victorian paranormal investigation. And you can't get better than the expert herself, who has done a doctorate in it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so
Now, I've investigated this church secretly, and it's the first time it's going to be access to the public to investigate.
wow.
But because there's human remains, we have to be very respectful, and because it was a church, very ethical. But this is wow, and it's in Bristol. So lucky.
Local for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
So there's loads going on, and it's nice to help other people.
Yeah. It does sound wonderful. To get into a place which hasn't been done before. The church as well. It's a whole different
And the
sort of thing, isn't
tower,
it?
The stairs are so small. I can just about get my backside up them.
Oh God, no.
But there
The
was supposed to have been a church on the site, a Saxon church before. Now the hill going up is where the top of the hill is where they hung people before they built Bristol New Gaol. And the last hanging, I think, was 1804 of two women. So they would have been put in a cart and they would have gone past up that hill to the boundary of Bristol and Gloucestershire to be hung. Bit of useless information.
Well, no, because like there were massive events, weren't they? Like in Nottingham, there's the National Justice Museum, an old court, and they hung them on the steps. They got everyone watching, but to put people and hang them on a hill, probably a
I've
lot of
been
people like watching that one, weren't because that was the entertainment of the day, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've been involved with researching and half finished documentary of a lovely Bristol boy, just turned 18 when he was hung on the 12th of April 1821. He was the first one to be hung on top of the gates of the Bristol Old Gaol, and the gates are still there, though they've put new buildings behind. And is one of favourites of Richard Felix, actually.
Yeah.
So he was 17. There was a girl called Eliza Balsam, and so say they were going out with each other. And on a January day, 8 o'clock at night, so bear in mind it was pitch black, he saw her cross the brook with another boy. And supposedly, though he always denied it, he threw a stone and it hit her temple. She fell back. She got home, she had a headache. Her mother put a bread poultice on there. But after 7 days, she walked, I must have been about 8 miles, to Bristol Infirmary. And there was a Dr. Richard Smith. Now it shows the difference in the class system. He was a surgeon. He also was a former body snatcher, so he would steal corpses from graves. He insisted she stayed in, and he decided to perform a trepanning, so where they drill a hole in the skull to release the pressure. Now, her skull cap is in a school in Nambia, Africa, and we've interviewed the professor there, and he examined it and he said it was the trepanning that killed her.
Oh,
But this Dr. Richard Smith, after the trepanning, she died. They arrested John. He was in the trial was in the Star Inn pub in Bedminster in Bristol, and Dr. Smith had taken her head. So her mother supposedly buried just the body, not knowing. He had taken the flesh off. He had her skull in his pocket. John was found guilty, and he was hung a few days after his 18th birthday. His father wrote and begged to have the body because of the Murder Act of 1752. He was going to be worked on. So he died on the Friday. Now imagine the body. By the Monday, Dr. Smith, with 70 people present, did the first autopsy. The following day, the students did it, and they were like pulling the muscles, to make the fingers move. They shaved his head. He took the skin off the poor lad's back, had it tanned, and had the body then boiled up and turned it to the skeleton. A few years later, he had the Booker's skin, where it gives you everything about the trial. Now, that Booker's skin is about 1,000 yards from where he was hung in a museum in Bristol.
Richard's seen that, hasn't he? Richard
Yes.
Felix. Yeah, he's
Yeah, because he's been.
that. Yeah.
That's right. He's been interviewed for that. So, 2011, a lovely lady was researching her history and found out about John Horwood, went to the university because they had the skeleton in a cabinet in a cupboard. They offered to just, put it in the furnace. She said no. Then a lovely man called Austin Williams offered to do a funeral based on that time. So it had to be a black coffin. They weren't allowed to say certain prayers because he was a convict. So 170 years to the day he was hung, his body was lowered in his father's grave. And she said to me before she died, Mary, she said, I've got him buried. You've got to get a pardon for him. And that's my next thing to work on. Because now, if you notice, there's more petitions to have like the witches in Scotland pardoned and things like that. So, yeah. And the cabinet is in Kingswood Museum and also the rope where they hung him, part of the rope, because they used to cut the rope up and sell it. And there were over
old rope, isn't it? Yeah.
between 10 and 15,000 people watched him hang. So, you have history around us constantly.
Right. Yeah. I know, just people don't realise what they're walking on at all.
Exactly, yeah.
It's only when I went to a ghost hunt at school round the corner, public event, that they said that the land my house is built on is an old Saxon graveyard.
Wow.
We've actually got a Saxon cross here as well. So
amazing.
There's a church near me as well. So yeah, it makes sense. But you never think about that, do you?
Go on YouTube and listen to the Lord's Prayer in Saxon. You will because it's Germanic, you will recognise some words we use in our language today.
Oh wow. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I'll check that out. But yeah, it's the whole history thing's fascinating, and like you don't know, like near here as well, they found like Roman villa in a field. One of the best Roman villas I've found. With the tile floor and everything. I've got the dog hassling me now, but you just don't know what's under your feet. Like people knew of the existence of these buildings, but after time, when the families die and everything like that, people just forget about it, don't they? And there's just so much we don't know.
I'm very thankful for watching every episode of Time Team because it's exactly the difference between a Norman and medieval arch, of course. But it taught you to look at a building and think, right, that's got a Georgian frontage. But if you look to the side, it's a much older building. And there's a charity, I forgot the name of it, that is sole purpose is to inform about the different building things, how they built medieval houses. And there's something about the width of an oak plank would tell you the date of that building. Silly things like that. And I want to know this.
Yeah, it's all stuff what's generally been forgotten about. The craftsmen have died, like my churchyard, again, I mention it again. Like, they moved I don't know what happened, but all the gravestones are lined up either side the path. But these gravestones are actually inscribed by two different people, and they've got the names on it. And they had stories, like one of the people had died by the Times coach. Now, to them, it meant something. To us, it's like, what's that? What is it? Coach and horses delivering mail? We don't know what it is, but to them, it was so significant. It was written, and the words they wrote, and the way they wrote it as well. Oh, it's just so,
it's like Kate,
so beautiful.
Kate has an amazing collection of Victorian morning jewellery, with the hair.
Oh, wow.
I never knew that thing existed. And I look at auction sites because I like buying the odd thing. She's got me now. I sent her a link the other day. Oh, look at that Victorian morning jewellery. And, death photography. You meet someone, they expand your mind to their interest, then you meet someone else that does the same thing. And that is being in the paranormal.
That's right.
It's a fantastic education. I can't recommend it enough. Seek each other out, get to know one another, get to learn a bit more about what's under your feet as well as around you.
That's it, because people have just got their eyes shut half the time, haven't they? They're just looking in the phones. They don't know what's in their own town.
Yeah.
Like, I don't actually know much of the history. Like, somebody said that. I need to look into it. I even, like, when I was at school, there's an author of the local town who wrote about the history. I know his name. I just need to get to a library, don't I? And
I'm building.
libraries are a
I
great
have.
place for information.
I must have about 25 books, but there's a mention of the Jamaica Inn. So I've bought all these, and the researching. I mean, there was this lady who was born there in 1955. Her father was Mr. Grouse. He was an ex Coldstream Guards, prisoner of war in the Second World War. His first wife died a clot in the brain, dropped down dead. His second wife was the barmaid. They had an affair. She got pregnant, and the daughter was the result. And the mother said that she loved the inn during the day. The night time, she hated it. It changed. Now, the ghosts then would go into someone's bedroom, tidy up and fold their clothing on the bed. Where's that ghost now? But it was also the stories of the pet pig that used to wander the bar. That oral history, unless it's written down, is so important. Percy the parrot supposedly died 1999. When Alan, the former owner, extended the restaurant, there was a plaque there and everything for this parrot that had been at the Jamaica Inn a long time. They dug it up, opened the box, no feathers, no bones. So I put a plea out in the local newspaper, contacted Animal Sanctuary. They said it, they went to look at it. It was pulling his, feathers out, looking very bedraggled. Apparently swore like a trooper. And it was female, not male. And then one day I put another plea on some Facebook, old Cornwall, one of those sites. Lady come back. She said, he didn't die. He was taken in by a family and lived another few years. So Percy the parrot faked his death.
Amazing, isn't it? It's just fantastic what you do find out.
It's the joy of it.
That's
But
it.
everything I have belongs to the Jamaica Inn, because the next generation will have that information, and that is your your legacy, so to speak. And it's not just me. There's a load of us that all put together and do this work.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's really amazing what you do. I've got seen investigations where clothes are folded or bag moved in old hotels. But yeah, that's in the US, isn't it, Eric? But yeah, it's just fascinating what you've uncovered, and yeah.
But you're just so lucky, and it's just the luck of the draw. That's all it is. I count my lucky stars every day.
Oh wow, yeah. To do, the job you love, it's brilliant, isn't it? It really is. Such a location, but yeah. But thank you so much for the conversation.
Oh,
It's been wonderful.
thank you so much for listening
Time
to
has
me
gone
garble
so
on.
quickly. Oh no, not at all. No, it's interesting. It really is. It gives more to the name. Like, everyone in the UK knows what Jamaica Inn is, but what do they know about the history? Some of the characters. Yeah, it's just so fascinating. But yeah, thank you everyone for watching, and look after yourselves. Oh, so Eric wants to move to the UK soon.
Oh, bless him.
Weather's dodgy, mate, but go down Cornwall. It's warmer down there. But yeah, it is a fascinating, whole of UK. It is fascinating. You have got the history, and yeah, it's just. I think people take it for granted too much, don't they?
I'm lucky. I'm going to the Talbot Hotel, famous for Queen Mary, next
Wow.
Monday and staying there. And I'm meeting the lovely Lorian the next day. So
Yeah, I met her a few months ago with Haunted Auckland. Mark
she's
came over
an
to say
amazing person, so
she's so
talented.
lovely and bubbly. Yeah, yeah, she's great. Yeah, it's so great to meet her a few weeks ago. Again, I forgot the first time I met her. Terrible. You meet so many people and they go, "Oh, I've met you before." Oh, okay. Terrible. I'm
Oh,
horrendous.
bless you.
I can't help it. I'm just the way I am, aren't I? But hey ho. On that note, anyway, thanks everybody. Thank you so much for your time. And if you want any tickets, if you want to contact you, how do they get tickets?
So Jamaica Inn, contact the main number or email them, inquiry@jamaicainn.co.uk. If it's the Mount Without, just contact. You'll find, if you look online, the Mount Without, you'll find an email or contact number.
Yeah, I think I shared it onto Paranormal Path. I think I saw you share it earlier, so I think I've shared it onto my group somewhere.
Thank you. But Kate, she's not only clever, she's such a funny speaker as well. It won't be boring.
Yeah, I think she's doing the Parafest.
Yes.
Parameet.
Yes. I'm staying in the hotel on the Friday with Rachel Hayward, and we're doing the Parameet on the Saturday daytime.
Oh, I'm in the hotel Saturday night. But hey, but yeah, I don't live too far. Well, I do about an hour. But yeah. All right then. So thanks everybody, and goodbye. Thank you.